Beginning of the Shofar Perigalav Halacha Gimel. Shofar shel Avodah Zorah, Shofar Avodah Zorah ain't taken by. You cannot blow into it for Rosh Hashanah. L'chatchila, to begin with. The Gemara is found in Rosh Hashanah 28a. Rashi explains that they using a Shofar Avodah Zorah which is forbidden to benefit from. As it says in Avodah Zorah, Masechta Avodah Zorah 51b, on the Posuk in Goran 12, verse 2, you shall destroy all of these places with the vessels that were used for the idol worship. That's what it's referred to. And even though they didn't bow to the shofar itself, they use it to blow, still you're forbidden to use it to begin with. Rambam continues though, if you did blow in it, you fulfill your obligation, because the forbiddenness of Avodah Zorah is to benefit from it. Before the mitzvah, and keeping a mitzvah is not a benefit to Yisrael. It's not called a personal benefit. At the beginning, you shouldn't do so, because it's despicable to use something which was used for Avodah Zarah, for idol worship. Shalyani Dachas, it belonged to Jews who lived in a city which all of them, or the majority, converted to idol worship. And talk about Liyotza. Even if you blew it, you did not fulfill your obligation. The Gemara explains the reasoning is because a city which is to be destroyed, it's considered that there's nothing there. It's as if everything is burnt, and something that's burnt has no length to it, and a shofar has to have a minimum length, as we'll see, of a tefach, and therefore there's no measure to it. And now we find that there were trees that were worshipped in Eretz Yisrael in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. They were called Asherah and Moshe. So the Ashra questions in Chulin, Peites and Aleph, they said that if you blow with a shofar of Avodah Zorah, you do not fulfill your obligation. And here the Rambam say that you do fulfill your obligation. And the answer to the Gemara Chulin is talking about a tree of Moshe that has no measure, and that's what it's referring over there. And so Tais explains over there. Asher and Moshe is those trees that the idol worship that was at the time of the conquered Yisrael, and the Posuk required them to be destroyed, as it says, and their trees shall be burnt in fire. And since Bnei Yisrael acquired, when they came into Yisrael, everything that was there, Avodah Zorah was obligated to be destroyed, like every idol worship, which belongs to a Jew. It doesn't help to nullify it. This is different than Avodah Zorah of a Goy. The Goy can nullify it by destroying it. That's what the Rajva says in Chulin, talking about by Asherah and Moshe, that it belonged to a Jew, and since it has you can't nullify it, you do not fulfill your obligation by a lulav. There was talking about by a lulav. It could be here we're talking about the question of why the shofar shouldn't be forbidden as well. Another explanation, which is different from Rashi, is written by the Maggid Mishnah in the Rambam, that Asherah Moshe, it was planted, the tree, to serve it as Avodah Zorah. Therefore, you cannot ever nullify it. Not that it comes it's there ever since Moshe Rabbeinu was living on this earth. The reason it's called Asherah and Moshe, because this type of an Asherah, Moshe Rabbeinu meant when he said you have to destroy it. Shofar and Avodah Zorah could be possible in three options. One, they served it, and that was an Avodah Zorah. Two, they blew before Avodah Zorah, so it could be a shofar that was blown before an Asherah. And three, it was brought as an offering to the Avodah Zorah. The Rajva writes The shofar that's brought as offering, there, that's even worse than the idol worship itself. The goy himself cannot nullify it, and therefore, somebody who blows in it would not fulfill his obligation because it has no measure. And here the Rambam writes, you do fulfill your obligation after the fact. It's talking about that the shofar itself was avodah zorah, or was used for avodah zorah, and therefore a goy could nullify it. The Shulchan Aruch and Rae Chaim writes, the shofar of avodah zorah of a goy, a shofar of a idol that belonged to a Jew, you don't fulfill your obligation even after the fact, because it's never nullifiable. And if the shofar belonged to a goy after the fact, you would fulfill your obligation if you did not intend to acquire it. But to begin with, one should not blow on it. Be like any other things that have to do with avodah zarah. The Mishnah Berurah writes that there are those that are of the opinion that if Yisrael acquired it, it can be nullified, and we're not that stringent. And so the Shulchan Aruch writes, but there are those who are stringent even in this situation. The Ramah is more stringent, even if the share belongs to a goy and he could nullify it, you cannot fulfill your obligation only if the goy nullified it before Yontif, because it's lacking in measure, and as long as he did not nullify it, it's forbidden, and there's no measure to it. The Mishnah Berurah writes, a shofar of avodah zarah, you can fulfill your obligations even before the goy nullified it, since he could nullify it. So it's not as if it's non-existent. It's there, it has a measure, and maybe he won't be burnt, and you cannot invalidate it because he benefits from that which is forbidden, because the keeping of a mitzvah is not considered a benefit for physical benefit. The Torah says it's forbidden to a person to use something which is despicable. The Sha'atzini adds that if you borrow a horn from a goy, there's the obligation does not make it like a avodah zarah, even though you're obligated to return it, because when you borrow from a goy, there's no din of a shiur. As we will in Rae Chaim, we find there's no din of a person actually being a watchman over it. The Rambam continues, a shofar that was stolen, that you blew in it, you fulfill your obligation, because Sheina Mitzvah L'Bishmiyas HaKodol, the mitzvah is only to listen. Al Bishalei Nogaboy, even though he didn't touch it, he didn't pick it up. The one who was listening, he fulfilled his obligation, Yotzo. There's no, by voice, there's no concept of theft. So Manoach says nay, because there's no physical actuality to the voice. Like they say in the Dorim, that vows do not take effect on words because they have no actuality to it. The Rambam had to tell us the reasoning, because he had difficulty. Why is a shofar that's stolen, you fulfill your obligation, and by a lulav and matzah that is stolen, you do not fulfill your obligation? Therefore, he emphasizes that by a shofar, the mitzvah is to listen, and even though it's impossible to blow without touching the shofar, still touching it itself is not part of the mitzvah. Mitzvah is to have the voice, but by lulav, the very touching of it is the mitzvah. Certainly, by matzah, you have to eat it. It's part of taking it in. Therefore, you do not fulfill your obligation with the matzah or lulav that are stolen. The Raiva disagrees with the Rambam. Amar Avram. Afilu yiyah boydin gezel, even if there would be theft by shofar, yom tri yolachem mikol mokim. It says in the Torah, it shall be a day of blowing for you in any case. That's what we find in the Yerushalmi in Perek Gimel Halacha Aleph. He does not disagree with the Rambam. He's adding that even if voice would have a din of theft that it's possible to steal, but since there's the posuk requires a day of blowing, therefore you fulfill your obligation even with theft, something that's stolen. According to the Rae, the permission, why you fulfill your obligation with a stolen shofar is because the posuk said so. According to the Rambam, for the reason that it has a different reason that there's no theft in voice, and he didn't use the posuk because the posuk is like it quotes with Rabbi Eliezer that a person cannot be fulfill his obligation of a mitzvah with matzah which is stolen, and you don't fulfill your obligation with a mitzvah that comes from a sin. But since it's not stolen, the voice itself is not stolen, there's no forbiddenness with it. So the bad questions on the Yerushalmi, why by shofar do we say it's a day of blowing, to say that it's kosher? By lulav, we say you shall take for yourself. It says you should take for yourself, es lochem lifsel gozel. That lochem comes to forbade that which is stolen. And he explains that by shofar the word is yiyah, the word that it says yom trua yiyah lochem shall be a day of blowing shall be, is extra. So we'd say it means that you can even use a stolen shofar. And for another answer is that by lulav, right, it's written that it has to be yours before pre-Eitz Hodor. So it has to be from yours. But by shofar it says the day shall be a day of blowing for you, and therefore it's a not a noun, but an adjective or a verb. The Taz explains that the lulav, it says you shall take for yourself, meaning that taking of the lulav should be from yours. By tzitzis, it also says you shall make for them tzitzis, and the Gemara derives should be theirs and not stolen. It should be theirs. By shofar it says a day for them, and the word for them does not go on the shofar. Therefore, even if it's gozel, it's kosher. Another explanation of the disagreement. The Aruch LaNer writes, the first commentary is disagreeing if any mitzvah which comes about from a sin is minat Torah not valid, or it's only a rabbinical injunction. Shagas Ayer writes, this would depend on the question whether a lulav which is stolen, it would not be valid the second day of Sukkot. The first day it's not valid because that's when you're supposed to take it. But the other days of the Sukkot are only rabbinical, and you would fulfill your obligation with a borrowed lulav, or would you fulfill your obligation with a stolen lulav? Rambam's opinion is that lulav that's stolen is kosher on the second day, because a mitzvah that comes from about through an action of a sin is only invalid rabbinically, and since the second day the mitzvah is mirabbanon, there's no concept on a rabbanon of a mitzvah that came about from a forbiddenness. The Rae is of the opinion that the forbiddenness by a mitzvah that came about from a sin is minat Torah. Therefore, even the second day you couldn't use it. This is the reason that here too the Rambam disagrees with the Rae by a stolen shofar. Because according to the Rambam, you can't say that the posuk comes to permit a stolen shofar, because in Torah there's no reason to not have it. According to the Rae, who says that the forbiddenness of using something that comes from a sin is the Raisa. He has to bring a posuk to tell us why it should be viable, a shofar that was stolen. And then it would come out that that's what the Ravid is adding here in his statement. In the Shulchan Aruch, he writes, you steal a shofar and you blow on it, you fulfill your obligation, even if the owners have not given up their rights to it. And the Magen Avraham writes, because there's no theft regarding voice. The Pri Megadim adds that this is so, and therefore, if you read in the Megillah, Purim that's stolen, you fulfill your obligation, because there's no theft in the actual voice. But to begin with, the Mishnah Berurah writes, in the name of the later commentaries, you should not blow, even if the owners gave up their, and I don't expect to get it back, because it says in the Pasuk in Tehillim 10:3, but say somebody who steals and Beirach and he blesses Ne'et Hashem, he is denigrating Hashem. It's not a praiseworthy thing. And you shouldn't make a bracha even if the owner gave up and he gave it to somebody else, or he changed the form of the shofar, which usually acquires it to the person. The later commentaries write that it is permitted to blow in the shofar of his friend without his knowledge, because the person wants that his items should perform mitzvahs. Certainly he agrees that he should blow 100 voices with the shofar, even though 9 is all that's necessary. But if the owner of the shofar doesn't give you permission, you can't take it from him against his will. To begin with, you should not blow with it. He wants to say there's a difference between a shofar that's kosher when it's stolen to a lulav that is possible when it's stolen. Even though both of them have the word lochem, that's yours, he explains differently than we said before, that by a shofar is no reason to say it should be forbidden because it's not yours. Since the Torah said it's a day of blowing, it has nothing to do with the action of your blowing. Well, the mitzvah of lulav, it's the taking of the lulav. Rabbeinu Manoach explains in short, in brief, that the Rambam had to give a reason why by voice there's no theft, in order to explain why you fulfill your obligation with a stolen shofar. Rambam himself codifies the halacha that by a stolen matzah you're not fulfilling your obligation, since it's eating of it is a mitzvah that comes from an aveira. By shofar too, the mitzvah comes about only through the aveira that you stole the shofar. How do you fulfill your obligation? Therefore, Rambam clarifies that there's no din of theft, and therefore you can't say on the obligation of hearing the kol shofar they transgressed on theft. Rambam continues, so furthermore, the same thing, the horn of an offering, which has to be totally burnt on the mizbeach, a burnt offering, with a horn, you can't, and he blew through the horn, you shouldn't blow through there. But if he did blow, yotza, after the fact, he did fulfill his obligation, because it's just as we say, it doesn't become yours, so too there's no usage by voice itself. If you'll say it must be nanas b'shmiyas hakoil, that he benefits from the hearing of the voice. Mitzvahs lo lahanas, the mitzvahs were not given to be benefited from. Therefore, hamud anayim a shofar, somebody who says I will not benefit from a shofar, if he made a vow, he can blow with a blowing of mitzvah. This is found in Rosh Hashanah 28a, that both by a shofar of a burnt offering or a shofar of a offering which is a peace offering, you fulfill your obligation, because mitzvahs were not meant to be utilized. The mitzvah is not considered utilization of something for your own benefit, and therefore If somebody said, I'm forbidden to blow, I have benefit from a shofar, he can blow through it. The Maggid Mishnah adds that it's permitted to blow a tkiyah mitzvah from a person who vowed benefit because mitzvahs were not given to be benefited. The reason that the Rambam does not tell us the din of shofar of shlomim, he should not blow, and if he blew, he fulfilled his obligation, like the shofar shel oilo, even that it's mentioned in the Gemara, because the Mishnah says he doesn't mention it since a Koram Oilo is Kodesh Kedoshim, and you still fulfill your obligation. Certainly, by Shlomim, there's no question that you will fulfill your obligation. Halacha Mishnah is a different reasoning. Since the Gemara is of the opinion that since it's forbidden to utilize the holy items, then Shlomim would be more stringent than burnt offerings, because by Shlomim there's no din of me'ilah, of misusage. When he blows on it, he's using kodshim. But since the Rambam explains that even by a burnt offering there's no misusage, certainly Shlomim, which are lesser kodshim, certainly you should fulfill your obligation. But to begin with, it's forbidden to blow even a shofar that's made that's taken from a shlomim, even though there's less of a forbiddenness to it because it's not as stringently holy as the burnt offering. Kesef Mishnah writes further that after the fact, when he blew with a shofar of a burnt offering, he fulfills his obligation because the voice does not cause usage. It's only when the shofar was taken off from the animal before they sprayed the blood on the mizbeach, meaning when you slaughter it, at that moment in time, the kedusha goes away. But the moment they blow, they spray the blood, then there's no transgression at all of being misusing the korban. The Rambam codifies the halacha like Rambam that the bones of a burnt offering that was separated before the spraying, they do not have a din of milah even after spraying, because the spraying permits them to be used. If they were separated after the spraying, then they would be considered part of the offering, and you would be liable for their usage forever. And according to this, in the Sefer Yom Teruah, the questions on the Kesef Mishnah writes that here we're talking about that it was separated before the spraying, and you only fulfill your obligation because there's no concept of usage by voice, and you can use the horns of a burnt offering after the blood has been sprayed. The later commentaries question on the reasoning of the Rambam that there's no usage by voice. In the Gemara Rosh Hashanah, it says they gave a reason why, at the moment he blows the shofar, he went out already was secular already. Once he used it, then it's already no longer kodesh. And the Lechem Mishnah explains that this is a disagreement between different Gemaras. And the Rambam goes according to the reasoning of the Gemara Mosdos. It says that voice, sight, and smell, one does not transgress on misusage. The Lechem Mishnah says, and that's difficult to say. The Yom Teruah also explains the contradiction that Mosdos is talking about, that he heard the voice of the sound of the music in the Beis HaMikdash, and he benefited, he enjoyed it. But if you take vessels of the Beis HaMikdash and you use them, then you would definitely be forbidden, just like drinking water from a vessel which is consecrated and consecrated the water. And so too, If you smell the incense after it went up, there's no forbiddenness to that. But if you take the incense and you burn it, then you would cause it to be, you would be liable. Therefore, the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah that says that if you blow with a shofar of a burnt offering, you transgress, is talking about that the person blowing it himself, who does an action in the shofar, transgresses. But according to Rabbis, that says mitzvahs never transgress because you don't benefit personally, even if you're the person who blew the horn would not transgress, and therefore he fulfilled his obligation. Thus we find that the rule of koil mara reich ein ben mi'ilo, that voice, sight, and smell do not have a concept of usage, is only when it's done properly. So, meaning, if somebody utilizes the symbols Beis Sheva, the fire that's burning in the Beis Hamikdash, or he enjoys the sounds that are coming forth from the Beis Hamikdash, or the smell of the incense. But if you would take something from the Beis Hamikdash and burn it to have light, he would transgress, except for shofar, because of the rule that a mitzvah, when you're performing it, is not meant to benefit you, but rather to fulfill an obligation of the Torah. Lecha Mishnah points out, on the language of the Rambam, who questions he benefits from the hearing the voice. Why is he questioning that? Since he writes that there's no concept of misusage by voice. And Lecha Mishnah explains, according to the Rambam, there was a question. There's no transgression, still it should be a forbiddenness midrabanan, and maybe we should say he doesn't fulfill his obligation. As we say, all of the Takon HaChamim is done like the Torah required it, and if there would be a forbiddenness in Mi'ilah, not Torah, he would not fulfill his obligation. This is so when there's Mi'ilah midrabanan, he would not fulfill his obligation. Therefore, the Rambam explains that mitzvahs are not made to benefit, even if there's no Issa D'Rabbanan. In conclusion, Lecha Mishnah is of the opinion that according to the Rambam, there is no concept of misusing the offering when it comes to the sound, even if he blew in the horn itself, the person blowing. And true in the Mishnah Lamelech would be of the opinion that the one who blows it would be transgressing, but the mitzvah he would fulfill anyway because he's not benefiting. Rabbi Akiva Eiger explains that the intent of the Rambam is to question there are two types of benefit. One, the benefit from doing the mitzvah. Two, the benefit from the voice of the sound of the shofar. Why would he fulfill his obligation? The Torah forbade him to benefit. The rule is, as we find in Tmura 4b, that whatever the Torah says you should not do, if you did it, it doesn't work. And this he writes that the benefit of the mitzvah is not considered a benefit because mitzvahs were not given to benefit. And the benefit you have from the voice of the shofar does not nullify the mitzvah, because even if we shall say that he did not fulfill his obligation, the forbiddenness is still there, and it will not be rectified. And in that situation, we don't say that if he did it, it doesn't help, because we're not removing the forbiddenness if there is such a forbiddenness. And therefore, when you blow, you fulfill your obligation. Taisa are of the opinion that there is a benefit from the shofar, from the voice of the sound. The Chodesh questions from all that we mentioned before would seem that there's no benefit from the blowing, and it's not considered a physical benefit. And he writes that so it would seem from the Hagos Ashri in Rosh Hashanah and the Mordechai, and that when you have benefit or you enjoy the hearing of the shofar, Peirush says, maybe it's not considered a benefit which is of value. The Shulchan Aruch paskins in 586 that somebody who forbade himself to benefit from a shofar would fulfill his obligation when he hears from somebody else, even though the other person is using a shofar. But if he says, I'm forbidden from the sound, he cannot blow in it, even a mitzvah. Shach questions here and there. The Shulchan Aruch says that if you say, I'm forbidden in the shofar, you can blow in it that which is for a mitzvah. That would seem he himself could do so, and not, as is written here, that somebody else can blow in it. It remains with the question of why the Shulchan Aruch contradicts himself. Yom Torah wants to answer that this depends whether he benefits from the blowing or not. Here it's talking about that he benefits from the blowing. Here there it's talking about that he doesn't benefit from it. The Torah did not say the halacha like the Shulchan Aruch, but rather, if somebody forbade benefit from a shofar, he can blow in it, as the Rambam writes here and the Rosh writes. And it would seem that that the one who forbade it can also even blow it. The Beis Yosef there writes the name of the kolboy, that the one who forbade it, he can't blow in it. If there are questions, why can't he explain, like the Beis Yosef, that who disagrees with the Torah? And certainly that the Shulchan Aruch says the exact opposite of the Rambam, the Rosh, and which is not usually the case, to go against both of them if they agree to one idea. Why, therefore? Because he say the halacha here, like the kolboy and the Riv, that the one who forbade himself to use a shofar cannot blow through it. And the logic would be that it would depend whether we say also l'tkoya boy, also or also l'tkoya loy. The question would be if whether we have the text to read that one is forbidden to blow in it, which would be what he forbade himself, or you can't blow for him, which would mean that he can't benefit from the voice itself, which doesn't make sense. That the Shulchan Aruch would go against that. So it would depend on what is the proper text.